Imagine for a second um, that your subconscious mind is just this master apothecary.
Right.
Like you're going through your day, dealing with stress, navigating your relationships, and meanwhile, deep in the background, your brain is quietly digging into these forgotten, centuries-old botanical texts.
Yeah, complex pharmacology, folklore, all of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And why is it doing this? Just to formulate the perfect, medically accurate metaphor to send you a warning about your waking life.
It really sounds like magical realism. I mean, it does, but the cognitive architecture required to pull that off is, well, it's entirely grounded in how human memory and trauma processing actually work.
Yeah.
Because when the conscious mind refuses to see a threat, the unconscious mind will just, build a whole theater to force you to look at it.
And that theater is exactly what we're walking into today. We've got this fascinating stack of your dream logs spanning 2 full years, paired with, frankly, a stunning psychological and pharmacological analysis from our sources. So, okay, let's unpack this because these are not your standard nonsensical showing up to school in your underwear dreams.
No, not at all.
We're looking at a highly specific story of psychological survival.
What's fascinating here is to really grasp what your brain is doing across these 2 years, we have to view these logs through the lens of abductive reasoning.
Okay, I've heard that term used in like logic puzzles and stuff, but break down how it applies here. Make it tangible for us.
Sure. So think of it like a brilliant diagnostician in an ER. A patient comes in with a bizarre cluster of symptoms, say a rash, a weird metallic taste, maybe a sudden fever.
Right.
Deductive reasoning works from a known rule down to a specific conclusion, but abductive reasoning, it works backward. The doctor looks at this chaotic set of observations and asks, what is the single most elegant underlying narrative that explains all of these seemingly unrelated things at once?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and when we apply abductive reasoning to the timeline of your dreams, we realize your subconscious isn't just randomly firing neurons, it's actively synthesizing latent background knowledge of botany that you probably picked up years ago and forgot.
Wow.
And it's using that exact medical framework to diagnose a really profound psychological transformation you are enduring.
So your brain basically built a diagnostic machine out of metaphors just to show you what was wrong.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So let's look at the starting point of this timeline. We're looking at the very first dream log from June 13th, 2025.
Which was a Friday the 13th, naturally. Right. Of course it was. So in the dream, you're being initiated into some sort of order. There's this heavy expectation that you need to learn multiple new languages. And separately, people around you are complaining about a specific man.
Right, the deceptive man.
Yeah, this guy who regularly exposes people to outrageous, dangerous things, but he constantly minimizes the danger. He waits until the absolute last minute to warn anyone.
Notice the juxtaposition there. You have these very mundane, structured elements like initiations and learning languages, but they're layered over this creeping, insidious threat.
Yeah, because in the specific scenario of the dream, this deceptive man introduces people to a product to wash themselves. He presents it as this totally normal cleansing routine, but then casually, like almost as an afterthought, he informs them that it contains a plant called Devil's Trumpet.
Which is such specific detail.
Super specific. And also in this dream, your mother is present and happy to see you. There's an expectation that you'll be traveling soon, and you're busy writing a report, which, that mirrors your actual waking life job.
That blending of your real-world job and the dream's initiation is really crucial. Being initiated and having to learn new languages, that represents entering a new phase of life or a new environment.
Yeah.
You're having to learn an entirely new way of understanding the world, or maybe figuring out how to communicate your reality to people who just don't speak your emotional language.
I mean, my initial thought reading this was that it sounded like classic imposter syndrome. Like you're in a new environment, you have to write reports, learn the language, and maybe this whole cleansing ritual with the man represents feeling dirty or inadequate in this new role.
It's a good guess, but the clinical literature would actually point us in a totally different direction based on the man's specific behavior. The core issue here isn't your inadequacy, it's his lack of informed consent.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, presenting a toxic substance as a harmless wash and minimizing the danger until the last second. I mean, that is a textbook representation of an external toxic influence.
Like Trojan horse.
Exactly. It signifies a situation or a person in your waking life introducing chaos, basically gaslighting you or violating your boundaries, all while disguising it as something normal or even beneficial.
And your conscious mind might just be going along with it, rationalizing the weird behavior just to survive the new environment. But your subconscious is screaming that the environment is fundamentally unsafe.
Right.
Which brings us to the most incredible detail. Your sleeping brain didn't just invent, like, a generic green sludge to represent this toxicity. It explicitly pulled the name Devil's Trumpet out of the ether. Why that specific plant?
Because the subconscious is highly intentional. Devil's trumpet is the common name for datura, and its pharmacological profile literally dictates the entire metaphor of your dream.
Right. Our reference material from Sherry Armstrong's Trail of No More Tears maps this out beautifully. Datura belongs to a historical category known as the witch's weeds.
Yeah, alongside deadly nightshade, henbane, mandrake.
Exactly. And historically, it was used as a medicinal foot bath for pain relief or ceremonially to protect the soul from evil. But it comes with this massive, terrifying warning label. Almost every part of the plant is highly toxic.
Yeah.
And has this long, dark history of causing delirious states and death.
The biological accuracy your dream deploys here is just staggering. Let's look at the historical practice of those folk medicine applications. Women centuries ago would mix these specific plants into fat-based salves.
Right.
But they didn't ingest them orally. They applied them to areas of the body with thin skin or high blood flow, specifically the soles of the feet.
Wait, I have to stop you there and just push back on the logic of the dream for a second.
Sure.
Because if you are having a nightmare about someone trying to poison you or, gaslight you into accepting poison, why wouldn't the dream just show a terrifying needle injection or someone forcing you to swallow a pill? A foot wash seems bizarrely passive.
That is the pivotal question. And the answer lies in the medical reality of how the human body processes toxins. The route of administration changes the entire timeline of destruction.
Okay, how so?
If you were to take a deliriant like datura intravenously, like injected directly into the bloodstream, it hits the heart and the brain almost instantly. An overdose via IV causes immediate respiratory failure or sudden cardiac arrest. You die quickly.
So the damage is immediate and undeniable. You'd know it right away.
Exactly. But transdermal absorption, so pulling the toxin through the thick skin of the feet, that changes the entire equation. The skin acts as a time release filter.
Oh, wow.
It dramatically slows down the absorption rate, allowing the toxins to enter the system steadily. Historically, this meant a person could experience the vivid, flying-like hallucinogenic delirium of the plant without dying immediately.
So it's a slow burn. Your body's being poisoned, but the filter gives you time.
A very dangerous slow burn, yes, with a highly specific clinical path. If the dose absorbed through the feet is high enough, Phase 1 is the hyper-agitated phase. The person experiences a rapid heartbeat, soaring body temperature, severe confusion.
Just terrifyingly realistic delirium, right? Like, your body's basically sounding every autonomic alarm bell it has, trying to warn you that the environment is lethal.
Precisely. Then comes Phase 2, which is central nervous system collapse. The brain simply becomes overwhelmed by the steady influx of toxins. All that intense fighting agitation suddenly just breaks.
Oh, man.
Which leads directly into Phase 3, coma. The brain's electrical activity slows drastically, causing the patient to slip into a stupor, followed by a complete loss of consciousness.
Okay, this is where the abductive reasoning completely blows my mind. Your subconscious didn't just pick a scary-sounding plant to represent the toxic person or situation in your life. It specifically chose a mechanism of slow, delayed toxicity. It's showing you that the gaslighting and the boundary violations, they aren't hitting you all at once like a heart attack. They're seeping into you over time. You are being poisoned gradually.
And if your body is sounding an alarm about a slow poison, what happens when you have to live in that environment for another month? The waking mind might ignore it, but the brain escalates the metaphor.
Which takes us to the dream log from July 11th, 2025. The dynamic shifts violently here. You're no longer being passively watched by a deceptive man. In this dream, you are the one actively concocting a delirium poison to absorb through your own foot in a suicide attempt.
Right.
But there's a specific amount needed to be lethal, and during the creation process, you spill some of the poison. Because of that spill, when you administer it, you lose consciousness, but you survive.
The spill is key.
Yeah, and remembering a person named Sharon LeVay, having a dream within a dream about Alice in Wonderland, and finally, right before your real-world alarm goes off, your own thoughts say to you, "It's time to wake up, princess."
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When I first read this, the mechanism that immediately came to mind was an autoimmune disease. In the physical body, When your immune system is chronically stressed by environmental triggers, it gets confused. It starts attacking your own healthy cells.
Absolutely.
Psychologically, it feels like when you can't control the chaos and the toxicity happening around you, you desperately try to control the chaos within you, even if it means doing something deeply self-destructive.
The autoimmune analogy is incredibly apt for what psychologists call internalized toxicity. When an external threat is unmanageable for too long, the psyche often turns the aggression inward just to maintain a false sense of agency.
Oh.
It's the logic of a sinking ship where you start breaking the floorboards just to feel like you're doing something. But the most vital piece of this dream's architecture is the spill. You spilled the poison, meaning you lost control of the exact dosing required to end things.
See, in dream logic, that feels like a clumsy mistake.
It is the exact opposite of a mistake. The spill is the deepest, most primal part of your survival instinct physically intervening in the metaphor. It's the core of your psyche stepping in to prevent you from going entirely over the edge, ensuring you survive this involuntary, messy shift in perspective.
And that survival throws you directly into the Alice in Wonderland imagery.
Alice in Wonderland is the ultimate psychological archetype for the descent into the liminal space of the unconscious. Falling down the rabbit hole means entering an altered reality where the rules of logic, gravity, and identity just no longer apply.
Right.
You are surviving the slow poison, but your perception of reality is becoming deeply altered by it.
And then cutting through all that heavy delirious symbolism, you get a stark, almost startlingly clear thought. It's time to wake up, princess.
That clarity is the core self demanding a return to reality. It's your inner truth recognizing that escaping into the unconscious or numbing the pain with delirium or trying to self-destruct, that's not a viable strategy. It is a demand to face the waking world.
But, survival is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Actually living day-to-day in a state of internal and external toxicity takes a compounded toll. You can only bail water out of a sinking ship for so long before your arms just give out.
Right.
So we have a brain actively trying to survive a toxic environment. But how long can a human mind sustain that before something fundamentally breaks?
That tension brings us to the climax of the narrative, roughly a year later, in June 2026. Prolonged exposure to toxic stress physically alters how the brain processes reality. It often leads to a psychological mechanism known as structural dissociation.
Break down structural dissociation for us. What does that actually look like?
When a person endures ongoing trauma that they cannot escape, the mind sometimes compartmentalizes just to survive. It literally fractures the perception of self into different parts. You might have one part that holds all the vulnerability and the pain, and another part that becomes completely numb, ruthless, and highly functioning just to get through the workday.
And that psychological reality maps perfectly onto the final dream log. In this recent dream, there is a psychopathic girl holding another girl hostage. They're tied up outdoors. The hostage is in incredibly rough shape, clearly exhausted and battered.
Yes.
The psychopath has spider venom, and her original plan is to inject it directly into the hostage or pour it into an open wound. But the hostage begs for her life. She literally explains to the psychopath that her physical condition is too poor. She wouldn't survive a direct injection into her bloodstream.
The vulnerable part is acutely aware of her own fragility. She knows her limits.
Yes, and incredibly, the psychopath actually negotiates. She compromises. Instead of the lethal injection, she paints the venom onto the hostage's feet. And you, the dreamer, are observing all of this. You watch the hostage awaken, still tied up, and she immediately starts vomiting. And then she disappears.
Oh, God.
Right. The rest of the dream is simply a search party looking for her, but she cannot be found. So my initial reaction, reading this as a narrative, was that the psychopath is the obvious villain. She's holding someone hostage and forcing venom into her system. But if we go back to the pharmacology we explored earlier, the massive difference between an instant IV injection and the slow time-release filter of transdermal foot absorption. Is the psychopath actually functioning as a twisted kind of hero here?
She is, and recognizing that is the profound turning point of this entire analysis. The mind has fractured. The hostage represents your vulnerable, exhausted core self, the part of you that has been absorbing this toxicity since the Friday the 13th dream back in 2025.
She's the one who has taken all the damage.
Yes, and the psychopath. Psychologists would identify her as a maladaptive protector. Think of her like a heavy-duty circuit breaker in a house. When a power surge threatens to burn the entire house down, the circuit breaker violently snaps and shuts off all the power.
Wow, okay.
It plunges you into darkness, which feels scary and hostile, but it prevents the fire. The psychopath is the hardened, ruthless part of your psyche that stepped in to take control of a dangerous waking life. Her only goal is your survival, no matter the emotional cost. But the most important detail in the dream is that the psychopath actually listens to the hostage.
The negotiation is successful.
Exactly. By choosing the transdermal route, painting the venom on the feet instead of injecting it straight into the blood, the protector part of your brain is deliberately pacing the trauma. It is slowing down the processing of the toxicity so that the vulnerable part of your psyche doesn't literally die from the shock.
That is unbelievable.
Your subconscious utilized that deeply buried knowledge of botanical absorption rates to physically manage your psychological survival in real time.
It's acting as a valve, regulating the flow of the pain so you don't shut down entirely. But let's look at the physical reaction of the hostage. She wakes up and immediately vomits. Usually, vomiting in a nightmare feels like a loss of control, a sign that the sickness is winning.
Medically and metaphorically, it is actually a deeply positive sign. Let's look at the physiology. The vomit you saw is a highly accurate autonomic nervous system response. When a body is desperately trying to handle systemic poisoning, vomiting is the body's emergency override.
Right.
It is the physical mechanism of expelling the toxins before they can fully compromise the organs.
So the vomiting isn't a symptom of dying. It's the ultimate symptom of fighting back.
Precisely. Metaphorically, it means you are finally purging the toxicity that has been accumulating for the past year. You are rejecting the poison. The hostage is waking up, basically executing the exact command from the previous dream to wake up, princess.
Stepping back and looking at the architecture of this 2-year journey, it's just brilliant. Your subconscious acted as an invisible diagnostician. It dug into its archives, retrieved latent knowledge about witches, flying ointments, and the pharmacology of transdermal absorption, and used it to perfectly map out your emotional state.
It really is incredible.
It showed you absorbing a painful, toxic reality, but deliberately pacing that absorption to ensure your psychological survival. When the waking world couldn't give you a clear diagnosis, your brain built one for you.
The resilience is remarkable. But we do have to address how the final dream concludes. The hostage, after purging the poison, disappears. A search party is formed, but she is gone. So, to you, the learner listening to this right now, I want to invite you to reflect on that specific image.
Yeah.
The hostage survived the poison, but she's currently hidden. What specific part of your core self, is it your vulnerability, your ability to trust, perhaps your raw innocence? What part of you feels missing right now? What exactly is the search party in your waking life trying to find?
That is a phenomenal question, because she didn't die in the dream. She is just lost. She needs to be located and reintegrated now that the poison has finally been purged from the system. Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
Go for it.
We started this deep dive exploring how much we crave simple, binary answers. A broken bone on an X-ray, a clear diagnosis. But your mind proved that it didn't need a simple machine. It utilized ancient botany and complex human physiology to diagnose your emotional reality and keep you alive through a chaotic transition. It makes you wonder, if your subconscious mind is constantly archiving obscure historical folklore and complex medical data, just waiting for the exact right moment to deploy them to save your life, what other hidden libraries of knowledge are currently sitting dormant in your brain right now? And what kind of entirely new reality might open up when you finally unlock them?